Welcome, everyone. I'm Hayla Alawi, Atmosphere Press's Events Manager. Thank you so much for joining us for our free invite-only webinar, You, a Literary Agent, Tips and Tools for How You Can Be an Official Atmosphere Literary Agent, with speakers Nick Courtwright and Kyle McCord. Brokering a deal between an author and Atmosphere Press is a key way to fast-track an author's candidacy. You can be the one who helps an author's dreams come true and get paid for it. Today, you'll be hearing from Atmosphere's CEO, Nick Courtwright, as well as our acquisitions director, Kyle McCord. Nick and Kyle will discuss tactics for becoming an Atmosphere agent, financial benefits, and how you can elevate both your profile and the profile of a deserving writer. You'll also have a chance to ask your questions in the Q&A portion of the event. So throughout, just type your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and we'll get to as many as possible. Now, I'm thrilled to introduce our two speakers who you know very well. Dr. Nick Courtwright is the founder and executive editor of Atmosphere Press. He's the author of 4 books, and his writing has appeared in Harvard Review, Kenyon Review, Boston Review, Southern Review, and Spin Magazine, among many others. He was recently named one of LA Weekly's 15 book coaches to watch and has been interviewed for Authority Magazine, Valiant CEO, and on the website for The Best American Poetry. He holds degrees from the University of Texas at Austin, Texas State University, and Ohio University, and has taught at various institutions of higher education. He now stewards a team of 40 at Atmosphere Press, which recently published its 1200th title. Dr. Kyle McCord is the author of 7 books, including National Poetry Series finalist Magpies in the Valley of Oleanders. He has work featured or forthcoming in Boston Review, the Harvard Review, the Kenyon Review, Plowshares, Tri-Quarterly, and elsewhere. He has received grants and awards from the Academy of American Poets, the Vermont Studio Center, and the Baltic Writing Residency. He holds degrees from University of Massachusetts Amherst and the University of North Texas, and served as Associate Poetry Editor of The Nation, now currently serving as Executive Editor of Goldwake Press and Acquisitions Director for Atmosphere Press. So, Nick and Kyle, let's get into it.
Okay, so I'm Nick, and I'm excited to be here with you today. I think before I sort of get into what I want to talk about, I just want to, thank you for being somebody who's in this webinar. Usually with our webinars, we invite everybody in the universe, and we end up with these humongous audiences. But with this one, we just wanted it to be very exclusive, only available to a certain select cadre of people who had, been good advocates for Atmosphere in the past, were people who you trust, were people who you're people who we think are going to do a good job at this particular thing, and people who we would be proud to have sort of carrying the title of an agent, for Atmosphere. So what I want to start off by, walking you through is just giving you a little bit more of an idea of, what our products are, because obviously if you are going to be going out and advocating, trying to be an agent, trying to connect authors with Atmosphere Press, we want you to be really, well armed in terms of what you know about what it is that we do, so that you're not just saying, oh, hey, go work with Atmosphere, and then they ask you questions and you have no idea. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen really quickly, and then just walk through some sort of key resources that we have on the website that I think are going to, be really helpful for you in terms of, understanding what it is that we offer, how we work, and how you can sort of bring the knowledge of that to potential writers, with the possibility of them working for us and with us. So as you see, this is just, our website. There are a few things I want to point out just so you're, well educated. about this. One right there on the main page, if you scroll down, you can see some of the books that we've published that have done especially well. I always find that this is something really helpful to sort of establish credibility, understanding of what we do. You see here, Dennis Matthew, he's sold more than 100,000 copies. We've got these books that have won these various awards. That have gotten starred reviews, 35 best book club books you'll read this year. Dan Victor's book won a $10,000 book prize. So this is just a thing right there on the front step of our website that will give some credibility. So if you're talking to writers about atmosphere, that you can point to these kinds of successes that we've had and that our authors have had. The next thing I want to show you is the packages page, just so you sort of understand a little bit more, what our offerings are in this day and age. They've changed over the years, but right now we have a system where we have these three main packages that we offer, and it sort of gives some insight into, there's going to be something good for any type of qualified author here. So the three main offerings that we have are Essential, Premium, and Flagship. And this simple chart really walks through all of those options. So with Essential, you get basically everything that you need to have a successful book out in the world. It includes all of the design work, 2 editorial meetings, proofreading rounds, distribution, ISBNs, ebooks, all of this sort of stuff, a number of consultations that you get. And of course, in all of our deals, you get the author maintains full rights to their work. They get 90% of the royalties, and they get final say over design elements. So that's something that's really key. And for those of you who've known Atmosphere for a long time, this essential package for many years was basically the only publishing package that we offered. And then you could get sort of a la carte services added on to that. What we actually have now is we've sort of rolled those additional services, most of them focusing around things like publicity, into the premium and flagship plans. So the premium includes, hardcover for your book. You get book reviews, a NetGalley campaign, which will help get your book and get the author's book in front of the faces of book selling professionals, help you get more reviews, more advice, more guidance, and some free copies. And then flagship is basically the sort of the Mercedes option, where you get everything that we offer, including industry-leading reviews with places like Kirkus, Book Life. You get merchandise for your book. There's blurbs that you get from other authors as part of it, additional reviews of your book, and you're featured in our newsletter, which has a substantial amount of subscribers. And paid ads. So these are the three main packages that you'd sort of want to understand, so that if an author, a writer, a prospect, is asking you, well, what do they even offer? What are they going to do for me? This sort of simple chart here will really break it down really clearly. And as you see, one of the things that we're really dedicated to is transparency all the way through. And that's why we have the pricing listed right here. 3 installments of $1,900 for Essential, $2,900 for Premium, and $3,900 for Flagship. So all of that's just really, really clear. This is something that you can point writers to, prospective authors, and say, hey, this is what they've got. It worked for me. It's worked for these other authors. There are these award-winning books, et cetera, et cetera. Another thing I want to draw your attention to is just reifying that idea of our transparency, is that the contract itself is available in full on the website. So a big issue in publishing across the board is a lack of transparency or predatory contracts, whether that be from traditional publishers that are going to take a large percentage of your royalties, or from, vanity places, self-publishing firms, places like this where they offer unclear benefits, the rights of the book, the royalties break down. These kinds of things tend to be a little bit unclear. We've just wanted everything to be as clear as day, and that's why the whole contract is available here online. Anyone can just read the whole thing and understand that, we feel that it's a trustworthy contract. It's been reviewed by a lot of author lawyers over the years, like dozens. And this is basically the collaborative result of working with authors over years to find a contract that protects author rights and makes sure that what we do for them is very clear cut. So just like we say here, it's so fair we make it public. So I think that that's something really key. Another thing I want to point out is just the team that we have. I sort of recommend that go to other publisher websites, whether it be Penguin Random House or a small literary press or a place like BookBaby or whatever, a hybrid press, and just sort of see if you can even find out who is working for them. That's one thing that a lot of times there's a lack of transparency and clarity about, because a lot of your work, a lot of the author's work might actually be farmed out offshore to relatively anonymous people. Our whole staff is listed here on this website, where you can read the credentials of every single person, who works for Atmosphere, so that you know that these are trustworthy people. You can find them on the internet. They are real people. They're not just, hired contractors that are in for one project and then out where there's no continuity. One of the big things about working with us is the fact that we have a stable team. Everybody's pulling on the same side of the rope, and the vast majority of the people on this page have been working for Atmosphere for multiple years. It's a company that has very little turnover. It's pretty much just the same staff, that's been doing this for a long time, that's worked on dozens and dozens, if not hundreds and hundreds of books. So there's a lot of continuity. There's a lot of industry know-how that goes into this. And we think that sort of the clarity of the team, the humanity of the team is something that we definitely think is a good selling point for us. So it's something else that we want you to know about as a potential agent for Atmosphere, talking about Atmosphere, advocating Atmosphere to others. The last thing I want to talk about right now is just this page here, which you can find where under who we are, where it says what authors say. This is just a series of videos of testimonials, success stories, experiences that all of these authors have had working with Atmosphere, what's happened with their books, how the journey has been for them. So these are all videos that you can check. They're all public on YouTube, talking about their experience with Atmosphere and their experience publishing. If you want ones that are written, you can just click on this, and there are written testimonials there as well. I think that sort of true journey that these authors have had as real people publishing their books with us, I think really says a lot about what we do. So I just wanted to walk through some of these pages. There are plenty of other pages on the website. We have the FAQ, the giveaways. We have a super extensive blog. The Advice for Writers blog has literally, I think at this point, a couple hundred articles on it, just about all aspects of ways that authors can be helped. We, of course, also have our extensive book catalog that you can check out. We have videos and explanations on the process. We do author interviews. And there's all sorts of other explanatory work that we have here that you can check out. So when I come back on in a little bit to talk further, I'll talk about the incentive structure that we are going to be providing to agents, just to give you a little bit more idea of, what sort of financial takeaway you can get from referring people to us. But before we, dive into that, I want to pass the baton over to Kyle so that he can talk a little bit about how to communicate with authors specifically about Atmosphere. So take it away, Kyle.
Absolutely. One of the very cool things that happened for me just moments ago was that we passed by some of those success stories, and one of my very favorite books is on there. I know I'm not allowed to have favorites, but yet I do, which is Alison Barkley's book. Um, and I remember when I chatted with Alison about publishing her book. She was very wary at first because, especially at the time that we started publishing it, a hybrid contract was maybe not as credible as it is at this point. And there were a couple things I really loved about her book. It was speculative fiction, but was very rooted in human experience. Also, she was pretty excited to build a platform for herself, and really work with us to help make this book a success. She had a vision of what that book could look like and what the experience of publishing could look like, that really, I think, comes through in the text itself. When you're thinking about who would be a good fit for Atmosphere, a lot of those same characteristics are going to match. So I will give you 5 things that I think often are going to make someone a very successful candidate for us. One, let's start with a very basic thing, which is well crafted, right? If you look at the manuscript and you say, I've been working with this person, I really enjoy or believe in the book itself. Absolutely. That's a great book to send over. 2, if you have an author who is interested and excited about building a platform for themselves, someone who you think they may not be I'm not saying they have to be a perfect advocate for their own work, but someone who you think this person has a lot of potential as a writer, they really have a vision going forward, that person would be a great person to refer. Okay. Um, Thirdly, if you have someone who really wants to be the beneficiary of their own success, maybe they already have built a very successful platform and they're like, man, I'm not keen to share this with a traditional publisher where they're going to keep 90% of the proceeds, right? They think, what, I think I can do better working with a hybrid publisher. Or they maybe even they haven't thought about that yet. They still think, oh, well, maybe the best route is just to get a traditional publisher to pick this up and then hope that they, write me a very friendly contract. We can do better. Absolutely. Fourthly, if you have anyone who really has a book that you think this is a great text and agents are never going to get it, right? The traditional publishing world is never going to get it. It's not going to win a contest, right? And not because it's a bad book, because I will tell you this as somebody who runs lots of contests, people who send to traditional presses, they might have the kind of book that would be an all-star bestseller, win lots of awards, and presses just won't have an interest in it because they won't know how to market it. If you have someone who has a book like that, we'd love to take a look at it. I'm going to list the 5th as the wild card category, which is if you look at a project and you say, there is something unique about this, right? That would absolutely be a project to send over. So there's a variety of possible sort of author and book archetypes. And that's to say we publish a real range of things. It is one of the great things about what we do at Atmosphere. And I will say that as someone who speaks a lot to authors about the virtues of hybrid publishing, I recognize that there might initially be some pushback, and I understand that because, especially in years past, it's only perhaps in the last 20 or 30 years that there have started to be less stigma surrounding the idea of the hybrid publisher. And in fact, I think a lot of authors, a lot of presses are looking at the traditional publishing system and saying, there's something wrong here. There's something that doesn't fit with the goals of what a lot of authors want to do. And everything that we've built at Atmosphere is really with that set of insights in mind. So I would remind authors of maybe 3 things. The first is that I think is often an objection that, well, paying money up front means that, authors, that the press won't be invested in my book, right? But one good thing to know is, first of all, we do keep, we still get 10% of any book sales. Additionally, we work with authors who do 3, 4, 5 books with us. The only way that that's possible is if that author is doing well, accomplishing their goals, seeing the kind of successes that we really root for as a press, right? Secondly, I think that there is sometimes a fear that working with a hybrid, press means working with a group of anonymous people somewhere, right? One of the things I can tell you is that Atmosphere, you can go and see our staff, just like Nick talked about, and those are going to be the people that are going to be working with them on their book. They're going to be working with professionals at all levels, and they can see who they are, they can see their credentials. Again, very high level of transparency. And I always tell people, you'll be able to reach out to me directly. I always give authors my cell. So if something's really going wrong, and if in the middle of the night you're like, I have this thing I want to fix, maybe you don't call my cell, but like, you definitely can get a hold of me via email, and I will get back to you right away. We're the kind of company that really genuinely cares about the authors who sign with us. And you can be confident, as the person talking to them about Atmosphere, that again, you can say, well, I talked to their CEO, I can get a hold of their acquisitions director, I can blank and blank and blank. There's a high level of access and availability that you are going to have as someone we've entrusted with this role of acting as an agent for our press. Additionally, I think sometimes folks are a little reluctant to sign with the press without necessarily knowing the totality of the process. And one of the things you can be assured of is that in our contracts, we lay out exactly what's going to happen, in what order. And additionally, it's much faster than something like a traditional press, where you're often waiting years and years and years to get a book out in order to meet an audience that probably wanted it several years earlier, right? And so you can be confident of that timeline. You can be confident that the process that we go through is going to be one that's going to make sure it's the best possible version of their book in so many ways. So with that in mind, I'm going to turn this back to Mr. Nick, who is going to talk to you about some other details we want to share about your role in the process.
Okay, so what is in this for you, right? So the first thing, first and foremost, that I think is important is just to sort of emphasize the good feelings, right, that come from being able to refer somebody else, connect them, and then see them have a book happen. That's something that people, a lot of times, if you're in the industry for a really long time, you can become a little bit jaded towards, be like, oh, it's just somebody publishing a book, whatever, who cares? I've seen that before. But for a lot of people, this is a new experience. This is something like really, really super rewarding. And being a part of that, like connecting them to that bit of dream fulfillment, I think is something really magical. And I think it's something that in the past, people who have referred authors to us, feel very good about. And I can say historically, a significant percentage of books that we've worked on over time have come via referral because of people having good experiences and sort of wanting to, pass that on to the next, person down the line. So I think that that's, really key. That's really important. Second, there, of course, is money, right? That counts. So a couple things. One is that any author who you refer to us, according to our standard sort of referral program, any author who you refer to us who ultimately ends up signing on with us would grant you $250 stipend or $500 in publishing credit. That credit, if you yourself are an author, could be used on your own book, Or it is also transferable. So you could just say, oh, that I referred this person because they're a friend of mine and I'm so generous. I don't want to take the credit myself. I actually want to give the credit to that author, and then that author would get the $500 credit on their own contract. That's sort of the typical setup. Also, we have in mind the thought that people who are going to sort of be, real agents for us over the course of time, that would really sort of hold the mantle of that title, who are going to refer authors to us on a regular basis, that we would actually increase, that amount to make it even more worth your while. Just like anything else, you sort of need to go through a proving ground, get a referral or two under your belt in terms of people signing on. And then, we can see about upgrading you once you've sort of, earned your spurs a little bit. I also want to say that there's sort of a special opportunity just for June, that if you refer somebody to us during June and then they ultimately end up signing on, we would double that referral bonus. So it would be 500 in cash that you would get, or $1,000 in publication credit that you can either have for yourself or that you can transfer to somebody else. So that would be valid for anyone who you refer to us by the end of June. So that's really great. And in terms of how to refer somebody to us, honestly, the best thing to do is just to connect them in directly with Kyle. So loop them in with Kyle directly. He's the director of acquisitions. He's going to be the best person to answer their nitty-gritty questions, to give any feedback, to really explain anything that they might have or want to know. And you'll see his email right there in the chat, kyle@atmospherepress.com. So that's going to be the best way, just to loop the author in with Kyle directly. That's going to be much better than sending them to the submission page on our website, because this way they get to, sort of have the privilege of bypassing the slush pile, bypassing our normal sort of submissions process, and going straight to the top. And that's by virtue of being referred by somebody who is on this call or watching this video later, because that's sort of a special cohort of people who we already trust. So I'll turn it back over to Hala now.
Yeah, thank you both so much, Nick and Kyle, for all of that information. Lots to think over. We do have some time for Q&A with our audience members today. So if anyone has a question, please go ahead and type that in the Q&A box. It's at the bottom of the screen. We'll do our best to get to as many as we can, and also check out that answered tab in the Q&A box. There's some answers to questions that have already been posed in there. But for now, first we've got a question for Nick. How did Atmosphere get started?
Okay, yeah, I'm always happy to talk about that because it's kind of serendipitous. I wasn't, a big sort of serial entrepreneur, trying to go get venture capital funding to like build a publishing company. I was a college literature professor and creative writing professor, and I just helped some authors on the side. And then there was this one author who was, he kept asking me, hey, can you help me publish my book? And I was like, I'm busy grading these college composition papers, and then ultimately, I was like, okay, sure, I'll try helping publish your book. And his book was about the universe and the meaning of life. So I started trying to think of what could I call this press to put this guy's book out. And it's like, oh, it's kind of ethereal, kind of, atmosphere. Yeah, like Atmosphere Press. And I saw if the domain name was available, and it was, and that was 2015, and it became the first Atmosphere book. And I had no idea that that was going to lead to all of this. There was no, sort of big plan in those early days. And still now, here we are 9 years and 1,200 books later. And, my teaching days are long in the rearview mirror by now. And so that's how we got started. And even from the very beginning, right when I made the first Atmosphere website, because it was me just making everything and doing everything myself. Right from the very beginning, I said that our founding principles were honesty, transparency, professionalism, kindness, and making your book awesome. Those were the 5 things that I put on the website right from the very beginning. And those are things that we've sort of had as guiding principles ever since.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for that little story time real quick.
Mhm.
We also heard a little bit earlier about how atmosphere and hybrid publishing is different from other modes of publishing. Kyle, one of us is wondering what makes Atmosphere different from other hybrid publishing companies?
Sure. And I think those 5 principles that Nick just highlighted are definitely things that I would go back to as key touch points, right? Um, and I think transparency is one of the biggest parts of it, that an author knows exactly who they're working with. They know exactly what they can expect from the process. And they know, let's put it this way, you want to know what the money that you're putting into the project is actually going into. And the 5th point there, I think, is really the key bit that Nick highlighted, which is making your book awesome. You are going to get and I say this, by the way, not only as an editor, but also as an author. Atmosphere did my book 5 years ago, right? And so, I can say that my experience was absolutely marvelous. My developmental editorial was absolutely what I expected. And it was meaningful, thoughtful. I'd been through the book, tons of times, and Alex gave me some suggestions, and I said, "Oh man, there's some really good ones in here." Unlike a traditional publisher, I was like, "I'm going to take 40% of these," and I'm very glad that I did. But I didn't have an obligation. There was no editorial mandate that I had to take. Um, my cover was absolutely amazing. Ronaldo is just the best at what he does. I had a professionalized interior design, and then to boot, I had a marketing team on the other end of it, right, who really made my book incredible. Um, I think that uh, I talk to authors all the time who have worked with other presses, some traditional, some hybrid. And the big asterisk I would put by all of them is results may vary, right? Results do not particularly vary with Atmosphere, right? We make incredible books. We are forthright and kind to our authors, and those kinds of things are uh, a great rarity in the publishing world. I wish they weren't, but they are. And so one of the things I can say is that the folks who are in this call are in an incredible position because um, based on what you've kind of heard from Nick so far, you know that Atmosphere from 2015 to the present has had just massive expansion. And part of the reason for that is really just that um, there is such an appetite for what we do. And so I think it's such an incredible opportunity you guys watching this, you'll be able to fast track. You can connect authors with me directly. Um, and it's an opportunity for you to be a part of something that's really exciting and unique in the writing world.
Yeah, thanks for, going through all of that with us. Um, we've got another question. This is for Nick. What kind of guarantees can an author who is working with Atmosphere expect?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think, Kyle touched on some of it a little bit, but really in terms of guarantees, it's just going to be the quality of the experience. So one thing that we sort of state proudly is that we're the only press that exists in the earth that puts, rewarding and meaningful author experiences above all else. So that bit, the responsiveness, the attentiveness, the humanity, these are all things that we guarantee. We also guarantee, some of those really sort of key elements contractually, such as, 90% royalties go to the author, such as that you maintain 100% rights to your work. That includes derivatives, that includes sub rights, that includes like if you want to make a stuffed animal, based off of your children's book, you don't have to worry about your press trying to take a cut of your proceeds off of that. Those I think are the things that we guarantee. Is it possible to guarantee a certain sort of sales outcome? No, and it's not in traditional publishing either. There's no publisher that is going to be able to guarantee that your book's going to sell a certain number. And that's one thing that's actually a huge warning sign, is that if there's a press out there that's saying that they can guarantee that, you know that they're unscrupulous, because there's no way to do that across the board. What I can say is that historically, our authors who've been very motivated to sell a lot of copies of their book do sell a lot of copies of their book, because they're out there, they're being a face of it, they've built a network, and we really do a lot to try to inform authors in terms of how they can build their own platform, what they can do to set things up for success. And a lot of times that takes time. It's not something that happens overnight. You build your newsletter mailing list. Our newsletter now has almost 40,000 people on it. It did not have 40,000 people on it 4 years ago. It had like 6,000 people on it. So these things just take time to grow over time. And in terms of what we guarantee that we're going to be, putting a great effort for you on your book, and that you're going to be happy with the outcome because you have to approve every step of it.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks, Nick. We got another question I'm going to pose this to Kyle. It's a really great one, so I want to make sure we touch on it. How do I know if an author is a good fit for Atmosphere?
Yeah, so this goes back a little bit to some of the things that I touched on in my quick kind of presentation. I would say, again, I would go back to those 5 points, but I would also say an author, the authors that have been, I believe, most successful at Atmosphere have been folks who really believed in and were motivated to sell their book, right? And I don't mean they had a marketing background. I mean that they were truly excited about the project that they were involved in. It helps if you have a marketing background, but it's certainly not, you're certainly not obligatory. So someone who's very motivated, very excited about their book, we can take that, we can work with them in that kind of enthusiasm. We are going to have the kind of energy that matches them, right? I think additionally, someone who has any kind of, let's put it this way, who really values the personal connection, right, of working with a press, knowing your DE, knowing who they are, really getting to be interactive in the process. If you have an author, I guess this would be an example of someone who wouldn't be a good fit, who says, I just want to hand it off to the press and call it a day. That's not for us, right? If you have someone who says, well, I just, I want to just hand my book off and then I'm not planning to do anything to push it or to be involved in the process, that's not a good fit for us, right? If you have someone who is maybe very reluctant to engage with any suggestions or ideas, or just doesn't, again, I think these would be people who would be probably not great fits for the press. But if you have somebody who's enthusiastic, if they are interested in being the beneficiary of their own success, if they are someone who, again, has a unique project, something you think they're ready to do this now, right? They don't want to sit there and wait 2 years while agents, briefly scan over what they put together. We're the press for them to work with, 100%.
Yeah, thanks so much, Kyle. So at this point, that is all the questions we've got time for today. But if you do have a question that wasn't answered or you think of one, do feel free to reach out to us via email at books@atmospherepress.com or kyle@atmospherepress.com. We'll also be sending out a recording to all the people who registered and attended today, so definitely be on the lookout for that in your inbox. Thank you again so much to both Nick and Kyle for sharing the Atmosphere Agent opportunity with all of us today. And thank you to everyone who attended for being here and sharing your interest. If you're wanting to take a meaningful step toward becoming an Atmosphere Agent, go ahead and check out those links in the chat and encourage the writers in your lives to visit us at atmospherepress.com. There, they can sign up for our email newsletter, they can browse our new and forthcoming releases, meet the humans behind Atmosphere Press, and check out our testimonials and submit their manuscript. So, also for all of you, if this is something that you're really interested in, do be sure to reach out to Kyle directly, again at kyle@atmospherepress.com. We'll look forward to staying in touch with all of you, and on behalf of Atmosphere Press, have a great rest of your week, everyone. Bye.